Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. And today it's back into Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. This is our play by email challenge against the devilish Mr. Lodrick. And did we slip the noose? I don't know. I mean, there was more points, I think, for him to gather there at Bombay. But I don't know his fuel situation. He had his carriers right off the coast of, as someone called it, bombed Bay. And he certainly surprised us. He took down a carrier, he took down a battleship of the British Indian Ocean Fleet, but we had more there. But it seems like he has sailed off into a red sun. So we'll get over there. We'll check that out. We'll also just kind of go around the map. I thought maybe we'd look at the U.S., the East Coast, just kind of talk big general strategy. What am I trying to do? What islands am I trying to populate? Where are those units coming from? And how are we going about doing that? But first, as usual, in the setup phase. Oh, by the way, it's February 19th, 1942, the setup for that date. Let's go look at the points. There we go. Okay, looking at the stats. Today, in the last turn, we ran 6,386 sorties. The Japanese only, and I say only because he's been outpacing us about 2 to 1, run 7845 this time. Air to air losses, 0 to 0. Okay, destroyed on the field, 0 to 0. He did have a plane destroyed by flak, and we both took 3 operational losses. But all in all, not too bad. It was a fairly quiet turn. Lodrick seems to kind of go in this, it's like a wave. He comes in, attacks really hard, and then you have a couple of turns of relative quiet, although there's so much going on around this map that it's hard to have too much of a quiet turn, but this one was pretty quiet, certainly, compared to the last one. That's for sure. Political points. We've got too many. We need to buy something out and send it out. We'll go look in Los Angeles and see what we may want to buy out. Now, part of the reason I haven't spent these is I'm still trying to get things off the coast that were already not locked. And so, until you get those, it depends. I mean, there may be an infantry regiment that you really want to get over to Australia or onto an island like Suva. In that case, if that's the one you want, you may have to buy it out. But there's enough stuff early in the game. We're only 2.5 months in that really, buying thing, you don't have to buy something out. There's plenty to move as it is right now, certainly. So 1097, we'll go look and see if we want to buy anything out. Japanese score, he's got us it's not quite 2 to 1, 14,433 to 74,98. If you've never played the game before, it kind of ebbs and flows like this at the start. The Allies have about a 2 to 1. I think it's this same kind of advantage. And then as 1942 gets cranking, of course, the Japanese are ascendant. They are moving into bases all over the map, and so they start to build up points. But a lot of these points have been accrued in China, where he has just wrecked us in China. And we've also lost a good number of ships, way more than I would want to, certainly. Although the average is, about 7 or 8 points a ship. So we haven't lost that many big ships. We've lost a lot of cargo ships, more than I've ever lost. He did get the carrier. He did get, I was going to say the Prince of Wales, but the Prince of Wales lives. He did get the Repulse, which is a battle cruiser. Well, hell, let's just look at it. Ship sunk. Here are all of our ships sunk, and let's sort them by points. So we lost the Indomitable at Bombay last turn, near Bombay to a Type 91 torpedo. Boo. Okay, so that happened last time. We lost the Repulse immediately, sort of. Well, that's not true. That's not. Let me rephrase that. The Repulse was hit on turn one when he hit Singapore, as a good Japanese player will. You'll hit Singapore on turn one. When he did that, the Repulse and the Prince of Wales are together in a task force right at the start of the game, right off of Singapore. So he hit them both. The Repulse, however, was much worsely damaged, and so it had to dock in at Singapore. I tried to get as much repair as I could and then float it out of here. And then you see we did that in late January, right before Japanese troops got to Singapore. Unfortunately, it was so badly damaged. It tried to make it up the strait and get over to Colombo, couldn't do it, which is not unusual. Usually you probably lose both the Repulse and the Prince of Wales. We were lucky to get the Prince of Wales out. The Maryland, that was lost at Pearl Harbor on day one. Nothing we can do about that. The Royal Sovereign was lost with the Indomitable at Bombed Bay. And so that was 178 points. And then the Nevada was also lost day one at Pearl Harbor. Nothing you can do about that. We did lose a cruiser, the Indianapolis here. I'm trying to remember. Oh, that was on 12/8. So that near Naha. Okay, that was right over by Pearl Harbor, and it went down. I think is Naha. No, that may be in the Philippines. I'm sorry. I believe that's in the Philippines. 174 to 10 and 107. Yeah, I think that's in the Philippines. I don't know. I'm questioning myself. The Glasgow was took down in the disaster at Port Blair, where we were surprised. As a matter of fact, we had a couple of high-profile ships there. The Glasgow and the Exeter were both taken down near Port Blair. We lost numerous ships in and around Manila, including this submarine tender. Like I always say, these submarine tenders, look out because they're worth a lot more points than you think they are, as are the AOs, which are really just, floating gas tanks. We've had a few of those taken down, one out by Pago Pago that he got with his carriers. I'm not familiar with Kabara, but that doesn't mean anything. As you can tell, maybe geography isn't my strong suit. The Athol Duke and the Marula, those were also taken down. The Marula out, it's Dutch, out by Oosthaven. You're going to lose some stuff like that. The one at Diego Garcia makes me mad. And then we lost some AMCs. The reason I want to mention these AMCs is hide these suckers. They're worth so many points, and I don't really feel like early in the game certainly they're very useful. Now, later on, when you're attacking islands, invading islands, they can become much more useful. But early on in the game, hide these. Unfortunately, I didn't get them hitting enough, and they went down. This one at Port Moresby was a bad loss. Okay, wow, let's not dwell on the past. This last turn, we only had two ships that were sunk. They were two little AKLs, cargo ships, civilian cargo ships, each worth 2 points. Well, that's not terrible. We've looked at the reinforcements so many times. Let's just see what ships are coming in because, of course, that's the headliner in this game. Whoops, let's sort it the right way. There we go. ETA. Well, let's sort it the right way, he said. ETA. Let's go check it out. Anything interesting? This is a new ship. This is a light cruiser, an AA light cruiser, anti-aircraft. These things really have quite a bit of anti-aircraft for a light cruiser, as you might imagine, given their name. Usually, oh, I was going to show you, the speed is 32, I believe. 33 max speed. And so these can go in your carrier groups, and really all they are is floating anti-aircraft. They can be very useful for that. We have some destroyer coming in, the Hotspur. We've got some more AKVs. I really like these to transport planes about. We've got a lot of subs coming into San Diego in 10 days. Now, these are your S class. They're shorter endurance subs, but they do not carry the Mark 14. They carry the Mark 10 torpedo, which actually works, which is quite an advantage in submarining. The Americans figured out to actually have a torpedo that works. And so these we will be getting out into those South Pacific islands, even though they are a shorter range. When you look at their endurance, it's only 5,000 nautical miles, but you just kind of hop them out to those islands and let them just patrol in and around those islands, or at least that's what I like to do with them. The big headliner is the Hornet that we eventually get in 20 days on the East Coast. You'll have to sail that down and through the Panama Canal. Luckily, you get all of these destroyers right here, the Meredith, Gwynn, Grayson, and Monson, that show up at the Panama Canal at Balboa. Now you have to take them across to Cristobal, but they do come in at the on the other side of the Panama Canal, and they can sit there and wait for the Hornet to escort it out to Pearl Harbor. One thing I did want to mention, and I'm just going to skip the rest of what's coming on the map. Just want to talk about different things this time. One thing I was going to mention is here at Pearl Harbor, let's sort by type out here. You're not seeing any of our carriers. Let's see, ships under repair. We don't have them there. Where are my carriers? That's always a good thing to know. Did I? Yeah, I had floated them out here. So one of the things I did is bring my carriers out here. And why did I do that? Well, there was kind of a risk reward there. He had a picket of submarines that was running right through here. Now, we've got a good number of destroyers now, but right at the start of the game, you don't have enough escort ships to be bringing all of your cargo and fuel, whether here to Hawaii or otherwise. But initially to Hawaii, you don't have enough escorts to do it. And very smartly, Laudric had this whole picket line of subs out here. Um, you don't necessarily have a great grouping of ships to go battle those subs. And so, you do have, like I said, you have some destroyers, and I put a good number of destroyers out here. The problem is they do not have very good anti-sub capability at the start. They're a level 2, right? And it goes from 0 to 9. Well, level 2 is not very good. No mathematician here, but 2 on a 0 to 9 is not very great. And so he took out a decent number of cargo ships out here, just kind of picking them off one by one. Even sometimes when we had escort, he was getting some. And so what I did is I batched up my carriers here. Now you probably don't need to bring out all four. One thing I was doing is I was going to get, and I can't remember. I think it's the Yorktown that comes in at San Diego later, because you have the three initially. I just can't remember which one comes in later. It might be the Lexington. It's one of those two. I just can't remember. That's the downside of getting old. But anyway, one of them comes into San Diego. Well, I don't like to bring it out all by itself, especially with a beehive of submarines out here. So I sent the other three carriers over here to meet it along with their escorts. And so I took the best destroyers we've got, level fours here. That's the Hughes. Yep, they're all level fours. They're all the same make. What class is that? Sims class. Okay, so this is the best anti-sub that American-wise that you have early in the game. Now the Brits have some level 8 subs. They also have what are called KVs, corvettes that are level 4. The Americans generally have just destroyers that are level 2 at the start, but then you get this whole big batch of fours, and I bundled them all together. I did give it a few light cruisers and cruisers. And what are you looking for if you're building your carrier fleet? Well, you want anti-aircraft in these escort ships. So the light cruiser, the St. Louis 512 is pretty high anti-aircraft. So we were talking about anti-sub running 0 to 9. Anti-aircraft kind of runs 0 to 1,000. That's not always the case. You can have more than 1,000, certainly later on in the game, but early in the game, just think of it as kind of 0 to 1,000 as a rough rule of thumb. Now, nobody yell at me in the comments. I know that, you know, here in just a month or so, when our carriers upgrade, they'll go up to like a 1,400. So, I mean, you can definitely go up over 1,000. But here at the start, rule of thumb, this is, 512 is pretty damn good if we look at just a representative destroyer here, and these are the new class of destroyers. They're a 170, right? The carrier, like the Yorktown, starts off at a 600. You see the upgrade here. We're going to talk about that in a minute because it goes to kind of grand strategy sort of ideas. But back to, I don't want to lose my train of thought because I do that easily as well. Um, so I bundled all these together, right? And again, AA on the cruisers. So I took the three best cruisers for AA and the two best light cruisers for AA, just in case. Just in case. I mean, it would be an incredible disaster if he would have sailed the carrier fleet over here, because obviously, even with all four of our carriers, he would outgun us and certainly have much better aircraft and crews than we do. But the reason I did this, I guess, to finally get to the point, are for the Dauntlesses and the Devastators. So you've got, generally speaking, on a carrier, you've got a squadron of what I'll call your better fighters. Now, this isn't a good example because these are the Buffaloes. I actually prefer the Wildcats, the F4F Wildcats. Um, but you usually have one of the Wildcats, and then you'll have a second squadron of fighters of some stripe. It can be the Buffaloes. It may be more Wildcats. It could be. But as you see over here, our aircraft capacity is 90. We only have 78 loaded on here now because this is not a normal load with just one squadron of fighters on here. Now, usually your number one squadron up here is going to have 27. As you can see, we have 23 ready, four that are, in some way disabled for the time being. But then you're gonna have this squadron of fighters. Then you're gonna usually have two squadrons of Dauntlesses and a squadron of Devastators. Now I'm talking early game here, right? Now you could reverse this. You could have two Devastators and one Dauntless, but the basic idea is you're gonna have three. Um, Offensive naval attack squadrons on your carriers. And you can see I came out here sort of unprepared. For instance, we don't have a full complement of pilots, but I'm also not expecting to run into the full Imperial Japanese Navy out here either. What I was doing was sub hunting. I guess I finally got to the point. And now you see these guys on train now because I don't think there are many subs left. So I've got some of these on training, even though their average experience is 70. If we look at the pilots, these guys are quite good for experience. Naval bombing, right? That's what they're going to be doing. And don't get them confused. The Dauntlesses are dive bombers, right? And so when you're looking at the pilots, you care about experience and you care about naval bombing. Okay, those are the two skills you need. Quite frankly, these guys do not need to be training. I don't know why I switched it over to that. I think I looked at these last turn when I set up. But let's put that on naval attack and rest, right? Whenever you put it on naval attack, it is commander's discretion. He can send them out or not. And so you do want to sometimes look at your commanders here and see, how aggressive are they? Because the less aggressive they are, the less likely they are to go out and do offensive missions, right? So he's got good leadership, good inspiration. His air leadership score 63, admin 60, aggression 69. It doesn't get much better than that. This guy's very, very good lieutenant commander here of the Dauntlesses. But the Dauntlesses are bombers. They don't carry torpedoes. That's the Devastators. So 6,000 feet, you can run them at 5 or 6,000 feet. That's what I generally do anyway. Uh, Range 8 or 7. Well, let's go look at the data. If we do the default load, which would be 7, the shorter, the smaller range, it's going to carry one 1,000-pound bomb. Okay. If we go out to the maximum range, which is only one hex further, only one 500-pound bomb, and you can see the difference in the loadouts then. So we would definitely want to run it at the normal radius or less, right? This range can also, when you get in a carrier battle, what you want to do when you're thinking about this range is go look at your fighters. So the Buffaloes here, what is their good range? Well, their normal radius is 6. That's probably really what we want. When they get out to a 7, if they get into any air-to-air combat, your operational losses could go quite a bit higher because they're almost out of fuel, right? I mean, they plan to go out to the vast, edge of their range, and when they do that, if they get shot, they get in combat, you could get them to an operational loss. So let's call it a 6. Let's click that back to a 6. Let's look at where they're most maneuverable. Well, as you can see here, there's no disadvantage at running them at 15,000 feet. They're just as good at 15,000 as they are at 7,000. So we may as well do that. 15,000, 6. They're on escort, first of all. So they would escort the dive bombers out or the torpedo bombers. All right. If they're not doing escort, they're going to do cap, 50% cap, which keeps them from getting too fatigued. Now, if this fatigue goes up, click this back to 40. If you put these on 40, you can really keep the fatigue in check. When you're in battle or close to battle, 50, 60. Usually I'll go up to 60 before, I think there's going to be quite a bit of action. But for now, there's not going to be. We don't really have reason to escort these out. There's no Japanese planes out here. So 40 on the cap. That'll keep the fatigue down. Range is the normal. Altitude is 15,000 because they're still as maneuverable. So now we know that. Let's go back to our Dauntlesses, right? And let's click this range down to 6. That way, when they fly out a mission, they're going to get escorted first priority, and they're going to be escorted the whole way. If you did this to a 7, the fighters would stop at 6, and they may get caught up with a bunch of Japanese zeros or otherwise on hex 7, right? So you want to keep those consistent, something to look at. Another thing, if you think that your fighters are going to be running nothing but escort for these guys because I don't know, you're attacking a Japanese fleet, you probably will want one of your squadron of fighters flying lower. Right? Think about escort and how it would work. You've got this dive bomber, takes off from the carrier, it's flying at 6,000 feet. You've got your escort up at 15,000 feet. Let's say the Zeros scramble off the deck here. They're going to go straight after the dive bombers. I mean, they're going to try to protect their ships first for the most part. So you may want to have fighters down at that level because they could get to even if you're running perfect escort, but you're up here, they can get to your bombers first. Now you could dive on them and you may cause them more fight air-to-air losses, but they may take out more of your bombers before you get there. So that's all the things that you want to think about when it comes to carrier warfare, right? So anyway, cap 40 because really we don't even have a reason. We could set this at 0. I mean, we don't have a reason for that. And then you have a second group of dive bombers, the Dauntlesses. All right. I've got these guys on training again. Anytime a group has an average experience over 60, or if you look and their main skill is over 60, you really, training them at that point probably just you're probably just better off having them prepare for the missions. Naval attack, rest. We already figured out that 6 is where we want to go because our fighters will go out that far. We did the others at 6,000. Let's do these at 5,000. You can do either. I think that people that have tested it have found that naval attacks at 6,000 are probably better. There are all kinds of threads on the Matrix forum about coming in at 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet. You can do skip bombing, etc. But I think really 5 to 6,000 feet is pretty default anyway. So that's the other Dauntlesses. Now let's get to the other type of plane that you're generally going to have on your carriers using torpedoes. And I would say with these guys out on the carriers, even if this is showing up red, leave it on using torpedoes so you don't forget. Be- because if you don't have any torpedoes, it will switch over to bombs automatically. Torpedoes is the primary or the favored function of these. Now let's look at the radiuses, right? Extended is 5. We know we can go out to 6. That's how far our fighters are going to go out. And when it comes back to the Dauntlesses, look, if you have some reason that you need to go out 7 hexes, do 7. You're just not going to have any escort. It's not like you can't do it, but your loadout is not going to be as good, and you won't have any escort. So just something to think about. But let's just do this normal. I would, at this time in the game and what we're up to here, maximum range, normal, radius. 4 is fine. If we look at the aircraft data, if we only go out 4, we're going to get the default load, which is a 22-inch Mark 13 torpedo. Okay, we get one of those. You see it right there. If we do go out to maximum range, the game automatically switches us out to a 500-pound bomb. Now you may be saying, why exactly does your loadout change? Well, it's because for extended radius, you're trying to maximize as much distance as you can get out of your fuel. So it's going to reduce the load, and that's why it's called reduce load. Imagine that. So anyway, we want the torpedo if we can get it. All right. So 6,000 feet. Take that off. Put it on naval attack and rest, and there you go. You're ready to go. And now this carrier. What was I doing? The Lexington. This carrier is ready to go. This is the loadout and the endurances and the flights that I would have it running normally. I switched this over because what I had done, and kind of the big point why I started talking about all this. Let's go to the Saratoga. See, the Saratoga is a little bit overstacked, and it has what I would say is the usual setup on a carrier. 27 Wildcats. Now these are the threes right now. Very shortly, we get the fours, which is obviously an upgrade on the three. Um, then we have two Dauntlesses, the dive bombers. We have one torpedo squadron, the Devastators here. And as you can see, I've got these guys all on training. That's because I think I've scared off all of his subs or killed them. Now, that's again, Fog of War, we just don't know because we got several indications that, when I say several, I would say maybe 8 to 10 indications that we hit submarines out here from this carrier task force. But think about it. This guy drops a torpedo in the water. He sees a splash, but there is absolutely no way that we would know in fog of war whether that submarine went down, what we hit, if we did hit something, what damage it did. And so, we don't know. I would love to know. Maybe you guys know if you're watching Laudric's videos, but I believe we hit, I will say anywhere between 6 to 8 subs along this picket fence here. As far as how many of them actually went down or if any of them did, I have no idea. But that's why I did it, is to try to scare him out of here. And so anyway, I have some of these on training. I still have some of them running escort. Of course, you're always going to want to do that. These things are gold, and it's not just because of the points that they're worth, but their offensive capabilities are so outdistanced. It's like having, a Panzer Corps out on the water, right? They just run around and wreck everything in their path. And you've seen that as Lodric has been running his around. Now, I would say standard operating procedure as an allied player is to hide these until April of 42. Okay? Because you are at such a disadvantage against, Lodric has two different carrier task forces that he can stack 6 carriers in. Plus, he's got all kinds of carrier escorts. He's got light carriers. I mean, the Japanese just so far outdistance you early on that if he catches you at any one time with just one of his two carrier task forces, you are toast. Your pilots aren't as good, your planes aren't as good, and you don't just have as much firepower in general. You're going to have 4 carriers. He's probably going to have 6 plus escort carriers and light carriers. You just can't keep up with them. And so I did this little limited thing to try to take out some subs. I think it did a pretty decent job. Now, why did I say April of 42 is the first time you want to have your U.S. Carriers come out and show themselves? And even then, in a somewhat limited fashion. Well, for one thing, you get the Hornet in 20 days, so that'll be in March. That'll sail down and come out to Pearl Harbor. Now you've got 5 carriers. Okay, you're on a little more equal footing. Still not on an equal footing for his usual carrier task force at this point, but But this, and this is why I pointed it to it, upgrade on 342, right? I would always suggest that you make sure your carriers upgrade before you get in any scrap with them. And you can see here the Saratoga upgrades. So this will be March 1st of 42. You want to have them in port at Pearl Harbor or at Los Angeles, one of those two, right? And you want to have, and let's see, there's another, yeah, this is it. Yorktown is 4 of 42, so April 1st. And the reason I said April is the first time you'd want to take them out is how does this work? So you want to make sure they're all on yes upgrade. And I'll tell you what I usually do is I'll come to Pearl Harbor when they're all sitting here in port. I bring up the anchor, right? I click off of all ships. I go to the carriers. We have no carriers in port now. Well, of course not. They're all out here, right? We have no carrier escorts. We have 4 battleships. I would say allow upgrades for these ships. Well, tell you what, let's back up. Let's back up. I want to do something different and show you how I actually probably do it, which is all of these, I would say no upgrades. No upgrades for these ships. So that takes it off of your tenders, your cargo ships, and whatnot. Now you can go through one by one, like if you want to upgrade the ACMs or convert them to YMSs, sure. But do those one by one. First of all, go to the port, say no upgrades, which is how they should have started the game. But there's been a couple of times I've had some cargo ships upgrading, and I was like, they weren't supposed to be doing that. So no upgrades, then click off all ships, and then just go down the list to your capital ships. Here we go to the battleships. Allow upgrades to just the battleships. Cruisers, light cruisers, allow upgrades. I mean, obviously you could just click on all of these. I would upgrade all of this when the ship is ready to be upgraded. So allow upgrades. Now you got to be careful when you're coming up to the first of the month and you're somewhere out in a war zone, let's say Sydney, for instance, or Sydney's a good example, Colombo potentially, someplace bombed bay. I mean, someplace where you'd have these ships. Um, and there's only a few places on the map. Go check this because if you are under pressure, you don't want this thing to be taken off the dang board to get upgraded, right? I mean, you need it. So let's go look at the Colorado. Colorado upgrade 142. So this has not upgraded yet. We've got it on yes. It has not been taken into upgrade because I just turned these to upgrade, right? New Mexico, that'll be in June of 42. So what happens when something upgrades? Well, I was talking about and I do it for almost all of my capital ships. But like I said, near the first of the month, go check what you have there. And if, for instance, 6 light cruisers, all of your light cruisers are going to come off the map, maybe turn 3 on and 3 off and then rotate them or something. But always, always, I say anyway, get your carriers upgraded before you really do much with them. Um, so we've got 2 that upgrade April 1st and 2 that upgrade March 1st. So the Enterprise and the Yorktown are April 1st, Lexington and Saratoga are March 1st. So we're going to want to take these back into port because they'll get there just in time for the March 1st. I will have that auto disband. We want this to, these all to sit at anchor by themselves because what will happen is on March 1st, the game will look, are you in a port where you could do the upgrade, refit, if you want to call it that? Are you in a port where that's applicable? Yes. Do you have yes turned on? Yes. Do you have enough supply at that location to support it? So, it all kind of comes out of supply when you upgrade these things. Because if you think about the currency of the game, it's supply and fuel. All right. So, ships use fuel, aircraft uses supply and infantry use supply, but also you use supply to do basic functions of the game. It's just a currency of the game if you think of it like that. And so it will take these 2 ships off the board and it will put them in repair ships. And so if we go here, these are all the ones I had selected. Let's get off that back to all ships, and we go to ships under repair. They will go into the shipyard here, all right, which may mean that you need to take some things out of the shipyard if you get way over. Now, one of the quirks of the game is, as you get closer to your capacity in the shipyard, the repair slows down, right? So if we put more in here, the number of days until they're ready goes up. However, if things are being refitted or upgraded, that they do not get affected by that. Essentially, it takes, I think, for a carrier, it takes 23 days to upgrade it. You may say, "Wow, it takes that long." Yes, but it's well worth it. If we go back out to the Yorktown, one of the ones that's going to come off. And I just no, I'm sorry, the Lexington. It well, that's got a decent anti-aircraft right now. 1036. I say decent. 1036. Saratoga 1036 because those are both the Lexington class. The Yorktown class is at 600. When this gets upgraded, I'm pretty sure it goes somewhere between 1400 and 1700. So your aircraft more anti-aircraft more than doubles. Okay. You also, get some other benefits and whatnot, but it's really the big thing is anti-aircraft. The Americans get incredible anti-aircraft if you keep upgrading your ships. It gets to the point where it's almost ridiculous that what a fortress they are. Um, but yeah, I mean, you have got to upgrade these things, in my opinion, before you get them out in the fray. Then what do you do with them? Well, you upgrade them here during April when they roll off of here, and you've gotten the Hornet, and you've gotten all five. You've got a decision to make. Now, one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm building up Auckland. Why am I doing that? Well, Auckland is a port level 6 right now. We need to take that to a 7. I would never dock or have a carrier task force someplace that was not a level 7 port. It's because the rearming of those takes a long time if you're not in a level 7 port. Level 7 ports get a huge, and above, get a huge advantage for rearming. And so you want to make sure that's a level 7 fort. I keep saying fort, I mean port. Uh, right now we're expanding this. It's at a 32%. You also, now you may say, "Hey, I just watched you at Bombay, man. You don't practice what you preach." But you also generally want those carriers, especially early on when you're outgunned by the Japanese. You want them at a place where you can put a lot of land-based aircraft that can fly over the top of them. So if you think about the fact that the Japanese have, let's say, 6 carriers and 4 support carriers of different types. So, 10 carriers, 6 of them full-fledged carriers together. They're always going to have more planes than you until you get more carriers, right? But if you're near a base and you're within its cap zone, you could actually outgun him even though he's got more carriers. Just makes sense, right? I mean, if in Auckland we've got 100 fighters and we bring, these carriers over, and let's say we have 300 total aircraft on those carriers. Well, I mean, now you're increasing your aircraft that are in theater or around that can fly over the top of your carriers by 25%. Whoa, wait a minute, 33%. Look at that. I can do math. But you're increasing that by 33% just by having them close to the base. That was the idea and why I felt comfortable having my carriers at Bombay. Bombay is a level 6 port, but I'm building it into a level 7 and it was getting close. I mean, it's above 61%. Now, it has a really crappy shipyard for whatever reason. This is essentially like having nothing. But it was building to a level 7, and at least initially I had quite a few fighters here. So I thought, hey, we've just got one carrier, but I can fly, this early in the game, 50 fighters over the top of it. It's fairly well protected. Certainly, I never expected him to come out here all the way around the tip of India and ambush us at Bombay. I just didn't expect it, and so that's how bad things happen militarily. But anyway, you can see him sailing away here off into what I said was a red sun. He is seems to have decided to vacate that idea. Now, I don't know if he was thinking about bombing other things along the coast. We don't have a lot along here, or if he's gonna come back here to Colombo and, look, this is a long ways. He's coming out of Singapore. So, I mean, these carriers, I don't know what the Japanese carrier endurance is, but it is very hard to operate these out here for a very long period of time because they eat up a lot of fuel. And the last thing you want is for these carriers to go dead in the water because they're out of fuel. So he may just be being safe and said, hey, I accomplished my goal there. I took out the British carrier. I took out the British battleship. I got to skedaddle back. Or secondarily, he could be saying, hey, I hit Bombay really hard. Why don't I get Colombo on the return journey on the way by? In which case, it could just be him kind of conserving his resources a little bit and then hitting, what's sort of our two main bases on the western side of the Indian theater, which is really something. So he may be just doing a flyby here. Now these are all of his destroyers. He obviously his carriers are right behind. He's going to lead through with his destroyers to make sure we don't have submarine activity out here that could maybe get a lucky shot on him. But let's look around the map really quickly. I guess I kind of covered what I wanted to this time. You get the idea. Aden and Abadan into Karachi, so I'll be setting those up. I still need to get a base force out to North Mail, so we at the very least can put float planes out here. Um, it does not. Does Mail have a? Yeah, it does have a level 1 airfield. If you have a level 0 airfield, like I'm trying to think where one would be. Well, Diego Garcia is right now. It's a level 0 airfield. It can build in all the way to a 6 if you wanted it to get those stealth aircraft out here, right? But if it's a 0, you can still have float planes here. Maybe that goes without saying. Maybe I'm just telling you something. You're like, hey, don't talk to me like a dummy. I'm seriously not trying to. I mean, I don't know that it occurred to me the first few times I played the game when I was still learning that, a float plane can land on the water. So you don't have to have an airfield built. Now you may want to build one up, but you can have float planes out here. So float planes Diego Garcia. Adu does have a level 1 airfield, so you don't even have to do that. North Mail also has a level 1 airfield, but float planes can also operate out of here, obviously. But you could put regular aircraft out here as well. If you get a couple of Catalinas flying off of North Mail or Adu, we have got to do that. But you want to make sure you have a base force here so that if they get damaged while they're out, and they will just over time, that they can get repaired. If you don't have any aviation support here, they're done. I mean, they're done until you get aviation support there because they'll never get repaired. Unless you got some guy on the base that reads, Catalina Repair for Dummies or something, you've got nobody out here that can fix a plane. And so that's why you've got to have aviation support. But anyway, just looking at the map, this is kind of the big headliner right here. Where is this stuff? Where's it going? I think since he already sailed out of here, highly unlikely he comes back to Bombay because I think he would run out of fuel. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Hey, I mean, he may be giving me the right hip and then taking off to the left, like a good footballer. But I doubt it. I would imagine he's going to maybe sweep by Colombo, and then we'll see what happens. We got a lot of stuff coming out of Cape Town. Almost all of that is going to Perth, including any troops that show up there. The troops that are showing up at Aden, so far, I've been putting most of them into India, but as you can see the green here, which means the Australians are here. Crikey! What do we have? Yeah, we got some Australian troops. So I'll load up some transports. I've got 34 ships in port. That's what you want at Aden. So you can just go here. You can see show active ships. That means I'm showing what's under repair. Uh, the Hermes or Hermes, I think somebody told me to call it in British. Is that a language? The Hermes is in the shipyard. 52 days to go, but it did make it back here, so that's being repaired. But if we look at the list here, first of all, let's just do this. No upgrades for anything on the list for now, and then one by one, let's go by, we can sort them. Let's sort them by highest to lowest. The Fortune, though, I would like to upgrade, so I'll just put that on a yes. This would make it a destroyer escort, which is fine. Um, you want to take that opportunity uh, for the most part, generally speaking, if you can. The AMCs, they can't upgrade anyway. Um, Okay, so all these are off, but I do have APs here. I'm going to put all of this Australian stuff. Now, what do we have here? 18th Australian Brigade. It's part of the 7th Australian Division. I like to have these together if I can. They're all part of 1st Australian Corps. They're, the other parts of this are already on a task force. Where is it? It's here. Okay. Why is it here? You may say, what are you, defending Socotra or Italian East Africa? No. This is a transport that I brought here from Aden. You have got to put it on the map first. Then we'll go down and click on this. Then once you do its destination, this is 13.6. Once you do, then you can say Cape Town. When they're coming directly out of Aden, you can't pick Cape Town because you can't pick box to box unless the box is open. And you can see here the pipe is closed, and so you can't get out this way until what is this, May of 1943, when the British established control of the Mediterranean. But until then, you can't go directly from Aden to Cape Town. You have to come this way. You have to put it on the map, okay, which we did. Then you set the destination in Cape Town, and we'll also set the home port to Cape Town. And when they get out here, I always do it this way. Now, you could take this and take it all the way south and to Perth, right? Sure, you could. As long as it's on the map and they've got the endurance to do it, you certainly could do that. I would say don't do that. This is a very good example. His carriers are like right here. If they sniffed out that we had a transport group of I mean, this is almost an entire division on these transports. This all toll, I think if we lost all of this, I'd just say, you know what, Loderick, let's try this one again. Uh, because this is so many points and a full Australian division, you can't lose this. You just can't. And what's the best way not to lose it? Well, to take it as much off map as you can. So this is the only time it'll be on the map until it gets all the way to Cape Town. Then we'll have it go to Melbourne. So it will enter the map all the way down here and go straight across to Melbourne, right? Now, he may have a sub or two that makes it down this far. Look, if Lodrick has advanced so far that he's got his carriers out here in the Southern Ocean, forget about it. You're done for anyway. If you can't bring things through from Cape Town to Melbourne, you're screwed. Perth is a little different. He can get subs out in this area, although they can't stay out here forever. They can't stay out here for very long. Um, but this is how I always do it out of Aden. If something is going to go to Australia, don't bring it down on the map just in case. Take it over here, get it into the penalty box, take it down to Cape Town that way, and then down to Melbourne. And that's the least amount of board time that this would be on. And as you can see, I have loaded this task force up with two destroyers, but they're the good level 8 British destroyers, the Griffin and the Decoy. And then I've also got a KV, a Corvette in here that's a 4. So I've got an 8, an 8, and a 4. Sometimes later on, you may put an AMC in here, an armed merchant cruiser. I told you to hide those, but they do generally have some decent anti-aircraft, at least for this type of ship, that would escort something. So it's just something to think about. Well, this has gone on too long, longer than I wanted it to. I've actually been enjoying talking about this stuff. What else is going on here? He has landed at Samarang. That's obviously a problem. We'll see which way he decides to extend, Surabaya or Batavia. He has, been landing over here in Sumatra. He hasn't come after Palembang yet, but that will be coming. He's taken all of Malaysia. Up in China, we've got these two guys and these two stacks in southeastern China that are kind of trapped back here because he's got forces through here. You can see I'm having everything get up here behind the river except for what's going to Changsha, but I'm trying to get all these guys up through Hanyang and then, try to put it all back together. Some of these have commands that are out here. These guys just couldn't get back. And so now I'm sending them towards the East China Sea or the South China Sea to just get out on the coast. I don't know. They can live off the land. They can cause problems, supply disruptions. I'm looking at these as kind of guerrilla fighters. Although he's been bombing the absolute crud out of them. We've got another trapped unit here. I don't really know what to do about this. It doesn't have a whole lot left. These guys don't. If we look, their assault strength is down to 12. So they're probably going to get surrendered here very soon. This is the big one. This is out of here, Cheng Chao and Loyang. We've got over 3,000 in assault strength out here, 3174. That is too big to get trapped. I mean, we either got to fight our way through or run our way through, and I haven't quite figured out how yet, Rubik's Cube style. Got to hold on to Lan Chao. I'm having things, fall back there, but Lan Chao around, kind of down this railway, but we've already lost Cyan and we've lost Nanyang, which, I mean, kudos to Lodric. I've never been in this situation before. Then, he runs around to Xinyang. We run around to I Cheng. I would love to mount a counteroffensive to get this back if we could, but we'll see. But around here to Changsha and then down. I'm holding on to Wu Chao right now because he has not moved out of Canton yet. So as long as he's going to let us sit here, we may as well. It's defensible terrain. It's rough. This is mountainous up in Guilin. This is actually flat here at Lu Chao. It's a little harder to keep command of. And Nanning, same thing. And if we look at the points, Nanning is worth 60. Wu Chao is only worth 20 to Japan. You can see their value to Japan 20. Um, Lu Chao is 20. Guilin is 60. So Guilin and Nanning are both worth 60, and that'll kind of guide you of what you want to protect the hardest. Lan Chao, for instance, worth 300 to Japan. Only worth 6 to us, but 300 to Japan. So, just keep that in mind. If we took Cyan back, it's worth 20 to him, only 2 to us. Nanyang 20 and 2 as well. But as you can see, like something like Chungking, it's worth 2,000 to Japan, 1,000 points to us. That would be a 3,000 point swing. We lose that. Aicheng's not worth a whole lot. It's just a very strategic location. Changsha, 60 and 60. You would almost think it would be more than that because it's the strategic importance of it in the south, but it's not. He's still expanding here through the Philippines. We have no way of stopping him. Although these guys in Cagayan have held up pretty well so far. I mean, they're staying alive. They're a little low on supplies. We're holding here at Ambon, of course. We've talked quite a bit about Ambon. Makassar and Kindari still hold at the bottom of Celebes here. Surabaya and Batavia will come under pressure soon. We'll see when he starts trying to land on the islands here. And then, next stop is Australia. So we got to build up Darwin, and that includes getting supply in here. And I've got stuff from Perth that I've put together, and I'm going to start trying to get as much supply into Darwin as I can, because if the Japanese are going to take it, the way they're going to take it is to starve us out, basically. I mean, we can get enough troops up here. What do we have right now? It's not that impressive yet. Oh, by the way, I took the ABDA command here. This actually needs to go over to Townsville, but I'll do that later. Assault strength. We have 322, but I have more on the way. Can any of these brigades go into a division? Unit organization? Yes, they can. They're all in Darwin. So if we go back, we can rebuild this unit, and now the 3rd Australian Division sits here, right? Always rebuild these if you can. They get certain synergies to do boardroom talk. They get certain synergies for being together as a division. Now they're a little light on some stuff. I think I am going to turn them on, replacements on, because I want to make sure that these get built to full strength because Darwin is so important. All right, out here by Moresby, he's landed. Our troops are now at this base, which is, what's the name of this? I always forget. Wah. I should remember that. That's easy to remember. Wah. That's not my baby crying in the background. So anyway, we'll probably take these guys across Papua here and get over here into Tarapo. Over into Tarapo. The guys that were in Buna have now fled to Moresby. The problem we're going to have at Moresby is the same thing I was talking about Darwin. We don't have any supply here, and we really don't have any way to get it up here because he's got carriers. That's not them, but he's got carriers out here. I think this group is the carriers, although this could be a bombardment group that are running around. You can see all of the sub squadrons I have out here. In every choke point, I've got sub squadrons. Now they have Mark 14 torpedoes, so who knows? We talked about Auckland and building that into a level 7. I like to have the Americans, once they get over here, really based out of Auckland, at least at the start. Now, eventually, you're going to move north, right? But if you think about the big ports over here, it's Sydney, it's Auckland. Those are the two big ones. Sydney is what, a 7, I think, to start? No, it's a 9. It's a 9. It's as big as it can get. Brisbane is a 5, but I'm going to build it into a 7 just in case. But up here in the north, you don't really have anything that's a major port. You've got a 4 here in Townsville, so you can take it to a 7, and I am expanding it, but it takes a long time. But it's great when you do get it to a 7, and then you can, come back here and rearm. Instead of going all the way to Auckland or all the way to Brisbane or all the way to Sydney, you can do it here. So anyway, this has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I don't think there's a whole hell of a lot else to show you over here. Next time, I promise, we'll come over here and talk about the U.S. East Coast and the West Coast and what all we're sending out. But I got stuck on carriers this time, and chicks dig the carriers. That's the big part of this game. So anyway, thought we'd talk it over. Till next time, Strategy Gaming Dojo. Have a good one.